the victim mentality is a problem of ego. It's actually the same ego of the arrogant person is the ego of the person that's a victim. These circumstances are harder or worse than everyone else around them. Like the whole world revolves around them. It's still ego. It's a mental health pandemic of our society is selfishness. It is the reason people are depressed.
Yep.
Selfishness.
It's the erosion of confidence. It's the erosion of aptitude. It is like a state of entropy for yourself.
This is like a simple, okay, you want your life to be easier? This is how you do it.
Yep.
Right? Okay, well, welcome to the Built to Lead podcast. We have our guest today, Tim Tribble, a good friend and a pastor at Parallel Church in Lethbridge. Yeah. Tim and I had a conversation we were thinking about a little over a year ago, where Tim had asked me a bunch of questions and we had a long discussion about money, finances, and kind of a lot of factors that are around those things. And I really, really enjoyed the conversation.
As did I, yeah.
So I thought, man, I wished that we had recorded it at the time, but I thought, man, there's no, I still have the questions and we still have our thoughts. So it just makes sense to do it again. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's roll.
Let's do it. I think when we first initially met, one of the questions that was on the top of my mind is that when we talk about how you see things determines what you do with it. I think looking and knowing our relationship, I've watched how you've managed what's been entrusted with you. And I think one of the questions that came to mind is like, how is it that you've developed this perspective of finances and resources in a way that it allows you to multiply and create excess out of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my mindset changed like as I've been given more to be a steward of, let's say,
right?
Is that money is just one aspect, right? Like there's the pure dollars, but it's just money is a tool and it's a resource, but we have all kinds of resources to us. We have our time, we have money, we have assets, we have our energy, we have all these other things. And so being a good steward of those things is an umbrella over all things that way. So it needs to be a mindset over top of it. But money has like a spiritual attachment to it as well.
Totally.
Which I guess people just don't appreciate that it's there sometimes. And so then when it affects them and they get tied to money, or they change from, there's the two mindsets that I think is a key that we want to get into with this podcast, which is the mindset of stewardship versus the mindset of ownership.
Yeah.
Right. And when we have an ownership mindset, it's all about what we can get, what we have, how we can use it, how we can get more. And it's about us. It's an us thing. Right. And so the more that we look in on ourselves, the more depressing life gets, the more unfulfilled we are by things like money. You know, some of the wealthiest people in the world are some of the most miserable people in the world, right? And some of the poorest people in the world, like when you go to like a place like Africa, or in my case, we've done orphanage work in Mexico, and you go and live in that environment and at that poverty line and level, the most shocking thing that you find there coming from a first world country is that they're actually quite happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, shockingly.
It's shocking. And it's like, it totally hits you right in the heartstrings, because you're just like, okay, well, I came down here because we just think these people are just like all laying around in a circle, dying of starvation. And in reality, they're living a full life.
Yeah.
You know, and there's definitely problems and they have bad attachments to money too. But the happiness and the joy and fulfillment that we get to live in our life is not tied to how much money we have.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And oftentimes when you talk about those trips that you go to these different countries, like a lot of times you leave with more value than what you actually left. So you think you're coming and bringing resources, but you're leaving with a brand new perspective on the contentment of what you already have.
Yeah. And so like you come back and you come into your first world country in your big fancy car and your big fancy house, and you lose touch with it very quickly.
Yeah.
But I'd hope that most people that do that, and if people can take something away from this, is that fulfillment does not come from acquiring more money.
Right.
Yeah. And the more we hold things, the more tightly we hold things, the more God tends to take them away or challenge us on those things. Yeah. For me, like I have a bit of a truck fetish.
No.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
Say.
I like my big dually trucks and my old Chevys and my old Fords, and like I have quite a few, and God has really challenged me at times on that. It's like, okay, it's okay to have nice stuff, to like nice stuff, but whose stuff is it really?
That's right.
Right? Is it so precious to you that you're going to protect it? And when somebody needs to borrow your truck to go do something, or the kingdom needs something of yours to use for the betterment and furthering of the kingdom or God's purpose, are you going to hold it back like it's yours? Or are you going to use it for the ultimate purpose that it was for?
Yeah.
Right. What is it for?
Yeah.
Right. And whose is it really?
Yeah. I think a lot of times, like, we ask for stuff to be brought into our lives, or we'll see God about it. And then suddenly he gives it in. And then he's also begging the question. It's like, would you be willing to give this up for my sake? Like if you needed to.
Yeah. Is this an idol?
Right.
Like that is what idolatry is really. Totally. Is when you start holding things above God.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're going, God asks you if you're willing to give this up, and you go, you don't even have to give an answer. You can feel that twinge in your gut. It's like, I don't really want to let that guy that thing. Yeah. Oh, what if he wrecks it? Oh, well, there's another part of this that is a spiritual side of money, is the abundance versus scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. Like it's an orphan mentality is often what we talk about, right? So the orphan mentality is, it's all me. I never have enough. I'm never going to have enough. There's scarcity. That this is the only time I'm going to ever have something. Yeah. Where God has an abundance mindset. God has 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills.
That's right.
There's no limit to God's access to resources. He doesn't need you.
Yeah.
There's a book that I like to reference. It's called The Blessed Life by Robert Morris. And I was just reading my notes on it before this, because there's these two books that have really impacted me over the years. I gave them to you back then.
Yeah. It's an amazing book.
Yeah. And the statement he made in it that has really impacted me is that God doesn't need you to give. You need to be blessed.
Right.
And in order for you to be blessed, you need to let these things flow through your hands and to give them away so that you can break that spirit of ownership and attach to a spirit of stewardship so that God can turn around and bless you with more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there.
So good.
That's question number one.
Yeah. No, I love it. Like, we've had our conversations too about like your upbringing, where you guys came from. And I've had lots of conversations with your family about that. Like, I wonder if tomorrow, if you started from nothing, like, what are the disciplines or behaviors that you would keep that you know now to ensure that you would have a productive future from nothing?
Yeah. So on this podcast, the first 3 podcasts that we did are one is core values, vision and mission. And then now you are the limiting factor, which I kind of, we didn't hit that hard on this particular one, but it's discipline and work ethic is another part of that, is you limit yourself by not having discipline and not working hard. So if I was going to start over tomorrow, I would do those things first. I would go, okay, what are our core values? What is the ultimate mission that God has for us to do? What is God's vision for our life and how we're going to accomplish it? And then what am I going to do about it? What do I have to be? What do I have to become? What disciplines do I need to have? Like, how am I going to hold myself accountable to do the best that I can, give God 110% of what I got?
Yeah.
Right?
And what do you have to let go of?
Yeah, I'm going to have to let go of. And so that's what I would do. Day one, you strip me to nothing. I would sit down and I would get those things figured out, and I would start from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, what has been, like, if you were to start from nothing, obviously that's not just an easy place to go from. And a lot of people get stuck in the mental battle. What has been the biggest mental battle that you've had to overcome when it comes to resources, when it comes to finances?
The biggest mental battle is, it's been a lot of years of business and a lot of years of learning. I started working with my dad when I was 16, got married when I was 18. So I had a lot of no knowledge when I started and a lot of new challenges to learn about. So the journey's been interesting. And when I look back, I really appreciate the journey that we've been through and all of the things that I was taught mostly through kicking and screaming and dragging of my mindset. So the biggest mental battle ultimately at the end of the day is, I'm a big control freak. I like to be in control. I want control. I think most people want control. You want to control your environment. You want to control your income. You want to control the people around you. You want everything to go the way you think you have it planned. And the reality is we just have so little control of what actually is going to happen. And so when if you don't have God in your life and you don't trust him with the things that are out of your control, then that's freaking scary. It scares you to death, right? But when you actually turn and appreciate that that God is in control and that everything is for your good, and that his vision and his opportunity for your life is so much better than anything you're going to drum up, then you kind of stop trying to control it so much and start trying to look for the opportunity and look for the direction and the vision that God is going to take you on. And then from there, control the things that you are in control of.
Yeah, so good.
Right?
Yeah.
Control your discipline, control your routine, control what you put in and your body, control what you put in your head, control what you put out.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the things you actually have control of. Control how you love your neighbor, control what you give, control how much time you spend on what things. Like, you have control of those things, but you don't have control on outcomes. You can't control other people.
Right.
You can't control the economy. You can't control most things.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you give up that control, but you give it to God, you can have peace in that moment, right? In all of the chaos, and then look expectantly for the positive that's going to come out of it all.
Mm-hmm. We do our part, he does his, right? So I was thinking of that book, The One Life Solution by Henry Cloud. And he talks about just doing a calendar audit and looking at the things that are in your control, and the amount of time. Like, you and I, we're pretty equal in the amount of time of day that we are given, but how we use that time is very, very different. Yeah. Right. And if it's not in your calendar, it's obviously not a priority, because that is,
Yeah. So, and then intentionality to that end, right? It's like, I think so many people live in this state of, like, they're so unintentional. 95% of people aren't that intentional.
It's autopilot. Yeah.
They're just wake up in the morning and let things happen to them. Right. And when you're letting things happen to you, you're opening the window to the devil's version of what wants to go in your life. You're opening the window to, well, whatever negativity gets put in, I'm going to churn through that. Whatever negative dialogues happen in my day, whatever impacts that come at me, they are just what they are. And I guess I'm just going to roll with whatever it is. And when things don't, like, things go bad and go bad and go bad, and we just go, I'm a victim.
Yeah.
These things are just happening.
Yeah, the victim mentality.
Fault. I'm not going to take responsibility for it. And it's just really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't relate to that. Like, it drives me crazy now. And I understand that that's the majority of the way that people think, but I don't understand how you can just stay there and just, like, it's got to feel so.
And accept that for years and years.
So demoralizing.
Yeah.
To just be the victim at all times. Something I read the other day, I thought was crazy perspective, is that the victim mentality is a problem of ego. It's actually the reverse problem of the ego of that, I'm the best, I'm the biggest, everything, I'm never at fault, or blah, 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 blah. It's actually the same ego of the arrogant person is the ego of the person that's a victim.
Still has narcissistic values.
They don't want to take responsibility for what's happening to them, and they think that these circumstances are harder or worse than everyone else around them. Like, the whole world revolves around them. It's still ego. Yeah. It's just the opposite version of what we all think of as ego typically, is that narcissistic, psychopathic, crazy leader or powerhouse guy that's taking advantage and working everything to his thing because everything's about him. Yeah. Well, everything's about you when you're a victim too. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I have some mentoring meetings that I have with gentlemen, and I'm just, when I'm sitting down with them and they're talking about it, it's like, man, this is happening and this is happening. And like, I don't understand why I'm feeling this, and me. I'm like, how much of your calendar is actually spent outside of yourself? Like, where in your calendar are you giving outside of your life to benefit others? Like, I guarantee you, if you were to accumulate those hours and actually invest, instead of being, woe is me, the sky is falling. And you're like, you know what, I'm going to be intentional about these next 4 hours of my day. I'm going to go serve somebody else. How that void and how your perspective would flip and make you realize that your problems aren't so small. Your life really isn't about you. It's about other people.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about that, and I've experienced this so many times with people within our organization where they are so self-focused. Yeah. They're just, everything is just them. They're blind. Yeah. Like, they're walking around looking at a mirror or a phone, or like, just their worldview gets so closed. And it's like, you understand, like, the natural inclination is to be selfish. But the more you look in, the more you focus on yourself, the more me, the more depressed you become. Yeah. It's a mental health pandemic of our society. Is selfishness. It is the reason people are depressed. Yep. Right? Selfishness.
It's the erosion of confidence. It's the erosion of aptitude. It is like a state of entropy for yourself.
Yeah. And biblically speaking, it's relying on our own strength.
Yes.
When it's us, it's also me that has to save myself. It's me that has to make things happen. And I fall into this at times too in business. It's like, okay, well, I got to make this deal happen. I got to make this problem go away. I got to solve this for someone else's problem.
Yeah.
It's me that has to do it. You start throwing the backpack on. Okay, I'm going to get this. You throw another backpack on. I'm going to get this. It's all me. And then you're just like being crushed by it all. And you're just going, I'm not capable. You realize that I'm not strong enough.
Yeah.
And then that's when you get real sad. Oh, I
guess I'm not cut out for
I'm
this.
not that good. I'm not capable. I'm not enough. And we aren't. But when you turn outward and you look outward and you see God and know that God is capable and God can do it and he's responsible and he says that he'll take it on for us. If we just give it to him, he'll take it. Well, then our burden gets light.
That's right.
Right. And in the process of looking out, you also look at other people and you serve them and you help them and you have gratitude for what you are given because you see the challenges other people are facing and you help them out of those challenges. And guess what? You're not depressed. You're not lonely. You're not dealing with all these
actually
issues.
feels somewhat on purpose. You're just like, oh, wow.
Well, purpose and fulfillment don't come by looking in. They only come by looking out.
That's right. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
When you talk about just habits and disciplines, what are the habits and language? Let's talk about like generational wealth and let's talk about your family. So what are the habits and disciplines that you have when it comes to your kids, in particular when it comes to setting them up well for the future?
Yeah. So the last time we talked about this, you sideswiped me with this question and I realized that I didn't think about it enough. Like my kids are right now today 10, 11, or 10, 12, and 13.
Wow.
And they're in very impressionable ages. And it's this time in their life where I only have a few years of opportunity remaining, and they're really important ones because they can perceive and the truths that they live by for the rest of their lives are potentially putting their foundation in the next 3 to 5 years. And so I realized in that conversation that I was really missing the mark there as a dad. And so then I also went back after that and I looked, okay, well, how did my dad and my mom impart those things into me? Because I think I turned out reasonably all right.
Yeah.
Right. So what did they do? And so the way I looked at it is one, understanding giving and tithe. When it comes to money, when we're talking about money, we're talking about wealth, we're talking about resources. God says, give the tithe. It's pretty straight up, straightforward. Some people say, oh, that's Old Testament stuff. And I'm just like, well, the world was made and the Bible pretty much laid out how it all works for you. So you can either listen to the way it works and make it easier for yourself, or you can do it the way you think you want to do it. And it can be challenging. This is like a simple, okay, you want your life to be easier? This is how you do it. Right. And I even heard a guy say the other day, and I have to appreciate, he said, it doesn't matter whether you're a believer or not. This is how the world works. God laid it out in the Bible. If you follow the rules of certain things, you'll get the same outcomes. You don't have to believe in God for the way the world works to keep working the way the world works. So if people give, then money comes back to them.
That's right.
Whether it's not about
natural
faith, right? Like it's the way, the rule of reciprocity is almost like gravity, right? It's just how it works. God made it that way. Sorry. Like
sort of burst your bubble.
Yeah, but that's just going to happen either way. So for me and my dad, I remember it so intimately because we were so broke back then. Like my parents really struggled financially when I was little, and they had to learn these lessons for themselves too. But we had these little glass like jam jars, and when we would make money from the time we were like 5 till 15, we would put our 10% in our jar. And my dad was going to hate me for saying this, but we were so broke at times that my dad would go into our tithe jars and he would need the money and they'd leave IOUs in there. And he paid it back always. But I just remember that a picture of the jar and this little notes in it. And what I take from it now, looking back, is that they taught us that it mattered to pay attention and be intentional, and that God gave us this.
That's right.
When we were broke, when we were struggling to afford to eat craft dinner, Dad was telling kids, you got to give 10%. and was himself giving 10%. Even though it was a struggle, even though it wasn't perfect, even though it was messy, it affected me in a profound way at that age, at that time. At that time, my mom tells a story of my dad who was doing auto body. And we were living in BC, and we were living in a little basement suite, old rusted out car. And I, of course, will never appreciate it. I don't know. But my dad's passing out at work because he hasn't eaten in 3 days. And he's working a physical hard job. But in that same timeline, there's a tithe jar in my room.
Yeah.
As a kid. Like when he didn't have, he still gave.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of how that impacted me. And so to this day now, into my kids, I wish I would have been doing it earlier. Not that we weren't talking about it, but I certainly wasn't being intentional enough about putting a jar or doing the thing, like the physical like lesson and understanding and pointing to it. And so I'm doing it now, where, we're setting them up bank accounts and we're separating out the when they make money, the 10% is going to go, and then talking to them about, okay, that's the tithe, but the giving is a different thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that when you give, it will be returned to you, shaken down, running over, right? And that when you give that 10%, God blesses the 90%. Yeah. And that 90% will look like abundance in your life. Instead of, and this is the mentality, is like you keep 100% and don't give 10%, you're going to lose 10%.
Absolutely.
So you're going to be living on 90% when you think you got 100%. And that's, you're going to live in a orphan mindset. You're never going to have enough. Or you can take 100%, you can give 10%, and your 90% will go to 100%, and you'll always have 10% extra.
Yeah.
You'll not understand how. And I have lived this on so many levels. It's like even to this day, when we make ridiculous amounts of money, like we are horribly, outrageously blessed. Right. I'm so grateful. But we'll go a couple months and I'll go like, it seems like we're spending so much money right now. Like I need to go over our budget. I need to figure out what's going on. I need to calculate, and I'll like be stressed about it, and I'll go sit down. And in the meantime, we're giving our 10% always first fruits out the door. Sit down and I do the math and figure out like, oh, there's leftover. There's fine. Yeah. We're good. Yeah. It's like, there's no flipping way there should be any money left. Let's not. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's no way. Yeah. And there it is. Yeah. Right. And there's been times when God asked us to give, when there wasn't money to give, when there was just enough at the end of the month to get there. And now I'm going to give money that I don't think I have to give, and that we gave, and then come out the other side with massive amounts of excess that make no sense and no reason. Yeah. Because all that going on in the background, 1,000 cattle, 1,000 hills. There's no end to the abundance. Yeah. He's in control of that. Yeah. So understanding God's rules for tithing, for giving, and then, what was my other comment here that I went into that I was teaching my kids? That you need to go out and earn. Yes. It is not this whole culture that we're in with the whole participation trophies. Let's go there. The government handouts, like that's not a thing. My dad never, and to this day, has never ever given me money, just handed it out. Yeah. Right? It had to be earned some way. Do you know what he did? He gave me opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to show up and earn it. Yep. Right? And the lessons that were learned, that I remember when I was like 12, 13, he was driving truck. He just had his one truck, and he took great pride in his truck. So he'd bring his truck home on the weekend. It'd go in the driveway and we would polish the wheels, white lettered the letters on the tires, clean his interior out. Like that thing would get done out, beautiful, back on the road next week. And so as I got older and responsible enough to do it without his help, he would say, well, I'll pay you. I'll park in the driveway. I'm exhausted. I'm going to go sleep on the couch. Yeah. And you can do this. I'll pay you this much per tire, this much per wheel, this sort of thing. And so then he's given me the entrepreneurial opportunity. So I actually bought my own polishing stuff. I got my own gear. I kept it in my little wooden box that I built for it. It's just my little business in a box, right? Yeah. And so the one day he was only home for 36 hours. Said, you want to polish this weekend? The weather's looking good. He said, I'm coming home, but you got this much time. Like, yeah, 100% Dad, I want it. I want the money. I can do it. No problem. Get invited to a sleepover. Nice Halo LAN party. We're all hooked up and our like cables running everywhere and our like old 50-inch boob tube TVs where you can't even see what you're shooting
The rear
at.
projection, yeah.
Yeah, and we stay up all night, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, maybe got an hour or two sleep, maybe jacked up on Red Bull, and so morning comes. I'm polishing truck all day today, and I remember I got, you know, it's like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm 2/3 halfway into it, and I'm just like, I just can't do this. I'm too tired.
You're done.
I'm exhausted. I'm emotionally spent. I'm frustrated. I'm not doing good, productive work because I'm a useless sack of garbage. Yeah. And I came in to the house and said, Dad, I don't think I can do this. And he said, well, you said you were going to do it, and this is how much time you have. You still, like, there's all night if you need it. Like, are you going to do this or are you not? Because if I book you and I can't trust you to get this done,
come on. Yeah.
Then this isn't, like, this can't be the deal. So you committed to this. So you got to finish. So he patted me on the back and took me inside, fed me, and said, okay, let's get back after it. I could have said no, like he wasn't going to hold a gun to my head, but it's just like, this ain't how we do business.
Yeah, that's man.
Right.
That's so
and
good.
So he gave me the pep talk and he sent me back out and I finished. And I put it into a new gear. Click. And that's a gear that I had from that day on to go, do you know what? I can do it. It's not like, oh no, it's okay. I get that you're a tired little guy. Like I'm 12, 13 years old. I'm not a man. Right. Like, and I see this in my son now. Like he's just started kind of working for the company here and there. And, you know, the first week he came in and started doing 8-hour days this summer, like he was tired, exhausted. Yeah. Like that's a lot for a 13-year-old boy to come in. He's pulling weeds in the hot sun and washing trucks and fixing trucks. He's working hard all day in coveralls. And, you know, day 2, day 3, he's tired. He's worn out. He's dragging his feet into work. And I said, hey, you got to put on a positive attitude. You got to come to work wanting to work, happy to work, appreciate the opportunity you have. Remember that you have goals that you're reaching for. There's a reason why you're coming to work. But you're not going to come here and have a bad attitude. You're not going to drag your butt. You're not going to make excuses why, you know, this is too hard. This is a choice. So put it in that other gear. And, you know, he struggled for a couple of days, but the next week he came to work with a smile on his face. He worked harder than he ever worked, and he found a new gear. Yeah. Right. So he is now bigger than he was before. He has a deeper level of grit than he had before. It's the same moment in the same pack of time. He's 13. Yeah. Right. And so that thing that was imparted to me when I was 13, I now get to impart it to my kid. Yeah. I didn't just say, hey, do you know what? You want a new scooter when you turn 14, or you want a moped? That's no problem. We'll get one for you, son. It's like, no, you want a scooter? It's $3,000. You're
going to work for it.
What's it going to take? You want that bad? What do you got to do? How hard is it? How many hours is that? Yeah. Like, how are you going to make this happen?
It'd be really easy for him too to go into entitlement mode, as if like, well, it's a family business, so I can just flake off and make it really easy.
I walked in there the one day and he had his phone out and he's sitting on the thing, and I come in there and I come unglued, like politely unglued, and it's just like, you don't ever. Yeah. No son of mine is going to be seen in this building on his flipping cell phone when he's on the clock.
That's right.
Never again. Yeah. Right. And I haven't seen it since. So like, we as parents, we need to teach our kids work ethic, mission, vision. These are what the things are. Like we're teaching them the grit. Yeah. There's the kids these days, no one has given them opportunities. No. Or pushed them hard enough, because it's all about how we feel.
That's right.
I don't feel like it today. I don't feel well today. I don't want to. It's not about what you want. Yeah. It's about what needs to be done and that you can do it. And you're not going to learn that you can until you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Entitlement will remove our ability to honor. So if we feel entitled to something, we will never be able to be in the space of stewardship, because stewarding is honoring what somebody else is giving you. Yeah. And if we feel that we're entitled to be able to be there, or that we're just entitled to a job, or we're entitled to a paycheck, then you lose your ability to see what's specific and intricate about the environment that you're working in. Yeah. And I think what you're saying about the kids too, depositing into them, heard someone say that, like, what we it's more important that we deposit into our kids than just giving them things. Because what we put into our kids will last them through discipline, will last them through values. But if you just give your kids something, then they will work through the resources without the wisdom on knowing how to navigate those resources. It's like dropping the lottery on a 14-year-old and be like, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just never, like, if you don't earn something, you never give it the respect it deserves.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's no different, I think, in being a steward of resources. Like God, like, be trusted with little, be trusted with much.
Yeah.
Right. This is in his case, this is little. Like how hard he works on fixing tarps, washing trucks, pulling weeds is more or less irrelevant in the grand scheme of all the things that are happening here. But if I can trust him with little, and he learns that now, then he will later be trusted with much.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, killing that entitlement and helping him understand that he has to build himself into the man that he needs to be if he's ever going to lead other men in this organization. It is not just his for the taking.
No.
Right. And I treat myself with the same lens, I would say, is that the minute that I'm not doing what it takes, the minute that I'm not leading by example, the minute that I don't have my house in order and I would try and teach something that I wouldn't myself do or model, is the minute that I'm no longer capable of being the lead in that position.
You're actually, in a long run, you are eliminating like a generational poverty mindset. So I think about like what you were saying about giving out and being of service to other people, is that you get locked in that victim mentality. It's like, well, I guess I'll never make that much, or I guess I'll never get to that position. Well, the fact is that like you grew up with little resources, but because of the modeled example of what depositing and what tithing and giving and living outside of your means looks like your position completely flipped, and your idea of resources and finances, like no longer living in a victim mentality. So in the same thing with our kids, it's like if we can model it, discipline it, and create a regular habit, then our kids' ideas of being locked in poverty or being locked in, I'll never get through this ceiling, it's like completely obliterated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I love it.
You could give a little clap just for me.
There you go. If you had to choose one practice that changed the trajectory of your financial position, what would that practice be? We talked a little bit about this discipline-wise, but if you were to go back to one fundamental pivotal point where you're like, man, everything changed after this, would it be related back to giving and tithing?
Yeah, there's lots of things that have changed. There's been kind of stages, but the one that I go back to is there was a period when the economy was really, really bad. We were working really, really hard just to survive. Cash flow was so tight that on the daily, we literally would show up in the morning and we would have, say payroll was going out today and we needed $20,000.
Yeah.
We just didn't have it. So the way the bank worked at that time is it had to be in the bank by noon to be funded. And if you didn't have it in there by noon, then they bounced it. So it's like, it's already gone out last night.
Wow.
We're overdrawn 20,000. And we would go to the mailbox, 11 o'clock in the morning. We'd pray before, this is a team of 3 of us at the time. My dad, my grandma, and myself were running the whole company. And we would pray and we would go and there would be $20,000 in the thing in checks. And I'm talking this went on, maybe not every single day, but on a couple times a month, at least 2 every single day in a week basis for years.
Yeah.
Like multiple years it was like that. That's how hard and how tight it was. And what I would say I learned that was pivotal about that time is then that God provides. There's literally nothing I can do. I can do all the work. I can work 16, 18, 20 hours a day. I can say all the right things. I can make all the right decisions. But if that check ain't in the mail today, then it fails.
Yeah.
And so it's out of my control. It comes back to a little bit of that control. So 1, it's out of my control. 2, God provides. So when God creates a vision, when God sets you on a path, he provides the resources you need to go that way. So if you're inside of his vision and his mission for your life, he will provide for you. Is it going to be pretty always? Is it going to be rainbows and butterflies? Lately, it feels a little bit that way. But back then, I had to learn that lesson to let go and let God do his thing and learn to trust him. Like I wouldn't say I trust him before that, but after a couple of years of that, now when things get like it never even gets close to as tight as it did then. But now when things are like, oh, things are getting a little tight, I don't immediately go to, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I go, God will provide.
God's got it.
I don't start stressing. I don't start panicking. I just know he will, because he put us here. I am doing the best I can to steward the resources he's given me. I think I'm inside of his will.
Yeah.
So if that vision or that opportunity or that negative thing that's coming is coming, God has a plan for it already.
Yeah.
So now I just need to be expectant and open-minded to whatever that looks like.
But that doesn't come with idle hands or just sitting by. Like
I don't sit down, put my feet up and go, okay, God.
Right. But you've done your part. Like God's not some genie just sitting there be like, okay, God, I need you to fulfill this wish. But it's like, no, I've been faithful with what I've been given. I've tithed, I've given above and beyond. I've done everything I know how to do.
Yeah.
Now it's God's strength.
Yeah. And it is ask, seek, look.
Yeah.
Right. Like knock.
Yes.
Like the door, God opens doors, but like not if you don't knock.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's what people do. They sit, the analogy my dad used to always say is, God can't steer a parked car.
Right.
If you ain't going anywhere, there's no steering going on. If you don't knock on the door, no one's opening it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to, he said the good process of poking doors. He said they're open, but I'm just going to go poke. Oh, that one's not moving. That's not moving. I'm not going to kick that door down. I'm going to poke it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep poking these doors until the one opens. Oh, this is the one? Yeah. Okay, let's roll.
Yeah.
Right. And keep moving ahead. But you got to knock, you got to seek, you got to look. And that's when the expectant mindset is that you are scanning the horizon. You're being active about the process. You're not just sitting there with your eyes closed, head in the sand, hoping that God figures it out for you.
Yeah. Or coming up with all the excuses of why it won't work and why you won't get there. So I have friends that like used to live in the city that I grew up in, and recently talking to them and trying to get them like out of the mindset of that victim mentality. I'm just like, hey, you know what if you tried this? And then boom, excuse comes up. Boom, excuse comes up.
Yeah. You've got the growth mindset. You're looking for solutions. You're looking for opportunities, and the fixed mindset's just putting up these blockades, and there's excuses everywhere. It's like, it's not, I can't isn't going to help you get anywhere.
That's
it's
right.
like, how might I is going to get you somewhere. Right. Another big thing that I think is something that is tough in our current environment, society, culture, is the understanding of delayed gratification.
Yes.
It's a huge, huge thing that most people need to understand better, is that as humans, we have the opportunity to understand delayed gratification. Okay. That's the difference between humans and animals ultimately, is that animals go, ooh, food, bite, eat. Go, next problem, right? Humans go, ooh, look, food, put salt on it, refrigerate it, and I'll eat it later.
Yeah.
Right. We know that the value of working together means that we're smarter than that. Right. So delayed gratification means I'm not going to do something now that's going to hurt my future.
Right.
But we are an instant gratification society. Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. I want it now. I want it tomorrow. I want it on my doorstep. I got cash in my hand. I'm going to burn it.
I'll pay more for it to be here quicker.
Yeah. I'll pay more for it to be here quicker. And like and it's not an investment. It's a transaction.
That's right.
We're transactional. Right. And so when we are dealing with money, we need to teach our kids, and we need to ourselves have a discipline to understand that delayed gratification is part of becoming wealthy.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean selfishly put money away all the time. That just means that understand now, if that on a time horizon, if you invest in something now that isn't going to pay you back, if I take $100,000 now and I buy a new truck and trailer and I put it to work, I don't get anything right now.
That's right.
Right? It's gone. Like, I'm sitting in my office, nothing looks any different to me. In fact, I just made myself a whole bunch more work because I have to go find a load for that guy. I got to hire a guy to put in that truck. I got to put all the gear in it. It's just going to cost. But that investment is going to return to me the profit from that truck each month here and forward, which eventually now compounds and piles up, and now I could buy another truck.
Yeah.
That's delayed gratification. When your company has a good year and you make a bunch of money and you go, okay, well, I can take that all out and I can go to Cabo and I can go do this and I can buy a fancy new car and all these non-tangible assets, like they're not assets, they're liabilities.
Yes, that's right.
So the delayed gratification is doing the thing that doesn't make you super happy or super exciting right now.
Yeah.
So that on a time horizon, it continues to grow.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an agricultural paradigm.
It's reaping and sowing.
Totally.
Absolutely. 100%. So that's the other thing I think is really important, is that, and it's delayed gratification. That's really all it is like, okay, well, I want this thing now. I want to go out and buy this Lamborghini right now. Well, if I have the money, I could do it.
Sure.
But what's the consequence? Right.
I find it absolutely astonishing how many payday loan places there are in the city, right next to places that feed into people's weaknesses. And like, it's just laid out like, it's almost like we're trying to keep
culturally
people,
acceptable.
It's culturally acceptable. And we're trying to keep people at the status quo level where it's like you're relying on a certain system to stay just here.
Yeah.
So when it comes to people who are stuck in like a status quo mindset with their finances, wealthy or poor, like what do you think is the deferring factor between people who break out of that mindset or the ones that remain in it?
Yeah. I think it kind of comes back to delayed gratification again, right? It's like drug use.
Yeah.
Right? Payday loans. These things that they're short-term perspectives. And one thing that I did learn going back to dealing with people in third world countries is there is a survival mindset that gets put in people. Mm-hmm. And when they haven't been taught the idea of investing, reaping, and sowing and delayed gratification, then it's just deal with feeling now.
Yeah.
Right. And so survival mode is like you see people in third world countries get money and you're going, oh, this is your, as a person who understands the process,
opportunity.
this is your out. You got a couple $1,000s. If you use this right, you'll never be impoverished again. And then you watch them go out and go party and drink and have this whole big thing and then come back tomorrow back into their poverty. And you're like, how could you do that?
Yeah.
You feel like you just don't understand. But what it is this, they've been in survival mode so long that they don't think about how to, like they're not, if they were thinking about, if they had the mindset of how am I going to create a plan to get out of poverty, they would have already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
It might have taken time. It might have been slow, but they would have made a plan and they would have executed on it. But because they never have done that and they've been in survival most of the time since they've been born, is that they don't think that they're worth more than being an impoverished person. They don't think that it's possible to get out of it. So when they get this moment, they're going to enjoy the heck out of it right now because they don't believe that there is any long-term out solution. Yeah. Right. Living paycheck to paycheck. And a really good book I recommend for this is Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right. Okay.
Have you read that one?
Yes.
It's a really good book. And it's the whole rat race thing, right? Get the cheese, eat the cheese, show up, get the cheese, eat the cheese, show up, keep the rat wheel spinning, right? This is the, not to go political, but this is where the government wants us. This is where society wants us. This is where the people who are the wealthy people that control the whole environment, they want us there. They want you to borrow for your house and borrow for your car.
That's
and borrow. And because who are you borrowing from? You're buying from banks, you're buying from credit companies, you're buying from financial institutions. Well, how do they make more money? They make more money if you never stop paying for the money you borrow.
And
so they get you at that place where you're just satiated enough, where you're just getting enough, that you kind of fall into this comfortable thing, and then you pay them forever and you show up for work every day at 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the trick is getting out of the cycle of the rat race.
Yeah.
Quit spinning the wheel, eating the cheese and showing up for the cheese each day, put a little bit of cheese away. And so that you don't have to go spin that wheel and then plant the seeds that you earned and then have them grow so that you can sit back without turning the wheel and watch them grow. Not even sit back, that you're tilling the land and you're doing the work to see multiplication instead of just the bread of today.
Yeah. Bumper crops. Yeah. And money is your slave. It's not your master. So it goes where you tell it to go.
Yeah. It's a tool.
It does what you tell it to do. Math doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. Like there's no falsities in this. And so like getting down to just the idea that, okay, when I'm financially messed up, I'm like, that's on me because goodness, look back on the track record of where it all went. It's like, that was an instant feeling gratification. Mm-hmm. That was spent on something not necessary. And then,
And there's another, I could list 20 books.
Sure.
Like another good one's Extreme Ownership.
Yep.
And the point there is that you are where you are because of the decisions you've made.
Right.
Any way you slice it, and you need to take responsibility for that to change. You're not a victim. Every decision you made have led you to the point of where you are now.
Yeah.
Right. And the minute that you flip the switch in your mind that is like every outcome is ultimately my responsibility is the minute that you start changing it. Right.
Yeah.
And that, I think that is the thing that people aren't doing. They're not taking extreme ownership of their life and their situation to make the moves, the changes, and the delay the gratification to the point where it needs to be delayed in order to get out of the hole that they're stuck in.
So good. Can I, this wasn't on our list, so I'm going to sideline with this one, but if you were to speak to average truck driver out there, average family man, average family out there that's just trying to make ends meet, and they're locked in their vocations. Nothing's changed in that regard. Like, what would you say for advice for the average parent out there that's trying to make things happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Something I think about a lot. I think about it a lot in our current environment too, because it's probably harder than it. In some ways, it's harder than it's ever been. In other ways, it's not.
Yeah.
Because with rising interest rates, costs, and like wherever you are today, if you're in a good amount of debt or you've made decisions, it's gonna become harder and harder and harder to get out.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like planting a tree. When's the best time to plant a tree? 25 years ago. Well, when's the next best time? Today. Right. So you do have to take extreme ownership and make extreme ownership and make the personal changes. So just functionally, you need to cut the unnecessary costs, put enough away to start creating that momentum in your financial life, right? Like where you invest it, how you invest it. But like even from a bigger perspective, usually if you're in a rough financial situation, you're not tithing. And I've met with more people that are in a rough financial spot and ask the question, well, are you giving 10%? And they look at you like you're a flipping idiot.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, well, this is the way the world's built and the way it works. And this is what God says. So don't invest a dime until you've given tithe.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And just test it. Like, please, for the love, just try it, step out on a limb. And if you believe in the Christian walk and in Jesus and God and the Bible at all, read about it. Study up on what the Bible says about money, because it's all clear as day in there. The advice that it gives of how to come out the other side of this. Right. You need to break the chains of the spirit of mammon, of enslavement to money and the idolatry of money. You need, and the biggest way to break that chain is to give it away when you don't think you can.
That's right.
Right. You want to see God work in your finances? Tithe.
Yep.
Start there. Okay. So once you've done that, I would say next look at giving, because there's giving multiplies.
Yeah.
If you give, and again, I don't like to say it like math. Like, okay, well, if you need $10,000, you better give 1,000 away so you can get that 10,000. Yeah. I don't like to say it that way, but the reality is it's almost like that, right? And if you can do that faithfully, the bigger picture is that you've honestly given it over to God, and you believe that He's in control of those finances and His abundance can come to you, and He can trust you with it because you're not just going to serve yourself. You've learned to serve others with your money, which means that more money can flow to you because you can be trusted with it.
Yeah. And part of that, going back to the values of the household and the family, right? So looking at your family and be like, what are the values of our family? Is this something that we are going to do as a regular habit, or is this something that we're going to do flippantly when we have the availability to do it? Or not, and then make it consistent.
And what's our money doing? Because where you spend your money is kind of also where your heart is. And in a lot of cases, like if you want to filter down to, okay, what are we spending our money on? Well, I need another pair of shoes when you got 30 in the closet, right? Well, there's people that got no shoes.
Yep.
And if you're completely oblivious to that, then you need to, again, take a good hard look at biblical principle, right? Yep. There's people without shoes. Are you helping the least of these? Are you doing what you're called to do with your money, or are you serving yourself?
So good.
Because you'll never, ever be trusted with much if you can't be trusted with little.
Yeah. Just awesome.
You had asked about what my thoughts were on stocks and crypto.
Yeah, let's go
that
there.
Kind of markets. Yeah. And the story that I have about that's changed my life drastically is really interesting. And it was one of the few times God's really spoken to me on something. And so there was a time when we started having some excess early on, and I thought, well, I don't like, we're doing business, we're doing real estate, and I'm not really in the stock market or in crypto. And then, all the financial advisors say you had a nice balanced portfolio, you have business income, you have business investments, you have real estate investments, and you have stocks and crypto and, bonds and all these other type of financial functions. So you should have this nice wide portfolio. So I'm going, okay, well, the next thing I need to learn about is stocks and crypto. So I start reading books about it. I start getting the app on my phone and I'm watching the markets. And then I'm like, okay, I think I know enough that I can kind of start playing here a little bit.
Yeah.
So I took $2,000, not a huge amount, and I invested $1,000 in a couple of different stocks, and I invested $1,000 in crypto. And so that's what we're doing. I'm watching. So guess what? Every 15, 20 minutes, I got to flip my phone open and there's the app that's telling me how my stocks are doing today. So how many 10, 15, 20 times a day I'm checking how's the stocks doing? How's the stocks doing? And my wife noticed.
Yeah.
So thankful for her. But she said, what do you like? Why are you like, you're on your phone enough as it is. What are you doing on there all the time? You seem like just irritated and rattled.
Wow.
And I'm just like, well, I'm invested a couple, and we talked about it before. And so that's partly why she knew. So we got these two, and this one's doing good and this one isn't. I'm trying to learn. The lie I'm telling myself, I'm trying to learn about it. And she's just like, are you sure this is really what's best? Like maybe you need to look a little harder at this because it doesn't seem like the fruit that God would want with, and it seems idolish. She said. So I actually went, okay, I hear you. Obviously this is causing problems from my personal life and and it wasn't a big problem, but it was something that could have become a big problem. Yeah. And so I prayed really hard on it and I asked God, you know what? I'm supposed to be stewarding your money. I feel like I'm being a good steward by trying to multiply it. And, the 10 talents guy, I'm taking the money and I'm finding a way to multiply it. And God said to me, it wasn't like an audible voice or, a letter I got in the mail, but like just meditating in prayer. He said, why would you invest in man's kingdom where the returns in percentages when you can invest in my kingdom where I return in multiples?
Wow.
And I even get goosebumps even talking about it now. And it was like such a profound thought because I've read the books. I know the facts. I know the biblical principle. It's like, basically, without being rude, he's going, are you stupid? Like I told you, and you say you believe me, that the kingdom returns in multiples.
Yeah.
I multiply money. I multiply resources. I multiply time. I multiply love. I multiply things. That's what the kingdom does. And I ask you at times to give money to the kingdom, and you've had nothing but abundance from that. Like, is it direct? Can you, if you're not being intentional, looking at, okay, I'm giving and I'm getting it returned to me, maybe you don't perceive it, but you're very blessed because you've honored me by giving when I've asked you to give. And so you're going to take money and put it in and it's really what it is it's man's kingdom or God's kingdom.
That's right.
Right? And what should we be investing in? If God's giving us resources, I'm pretty sure he probably wants us to invest it in his kingdom.
Yeah.
And so that was such a profound thought. And ever since that day, I that very minute, I pulled all my money out and I literally took that $2,000 and I gave it away immediately.
Wow.
As quickly as I could. And since that time, so much more money has been released to us than and not just outrageous amounts of money is released to us. And every year we're able to do more with it, to steward it better, to multiply it more. Yeah. It's God's way. It's how he works with money.
For the person that doesn't understand God's kingdom and that whole idea that's listening right now, like how could a practical person engage in that kind of activity?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I'll go back to that Blessed Life book.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good book. The other book is Wealth, Riches, and Money, which is another good book. The Wealth, Riches, and Money kind of takeaway for me is that we're supposed to be rivers and not reservoirs.
Yes.
God doesn't give us money so we can park it in our kingdom. It's supposed to flow through us into his kingdom. But then in the Blessed Life, in there, it asks you to test it. And so when I was done reading that book, I said, you know what, Lord, sure, I'm gonna test you on this. It says in the Bible, you can test me on this. Those are the exact words.
This is the book where he talks about carrying the $100 bills in his wallet, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So anyways, so I got on my knees and started praying about it. Okay, God, I want to test you on this. So you tell me where I'm supposed to give and when, and I will do it, and let's see what happens. So pretty quick, and I meditated and prayed on that for, I don't know how long it took, but it wasn't long. Like within a few days to a week, he said, you're going to give this much money, and this much. So 3 amounts of money, which was a fairly significant amount of money to me at the time. Still actually a pretty significant amount of money. And he didn't specify who exactly. He just said, I'm going to tell you, have it ready. And the moment that I tell you, and you're going to give it when I tell you. and it's going to be this amount, then this amount, then this amount. So when I tell you, you give this amount. When I tell you, and so, okay, God, it's good. Set it aside. It's like, oh, that's going to be tight. I hope he doesn't make that all go out tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he did at certain moments. Like I thought it would be one thing, and then that didn't quite pan out. And then another opportunity came out, and I gave it away. So I'm watching, I'm expectant, I'm waiting for him to speak to me on that, which was just in and of itself a great exercise. But over the course of 4 or 5 months, he had me give these all away. And so then they were gone. We had enough. It hurt a little to give that at the time, and we had to make some sacrifices. Interesting, at the time we were going to take our kids. This was right at the beginning of COVID. So we were going to take our kids to Disneyland. So we had, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 kind of set aside for that. And that was some of the money that went away. Right. And so it was like, Ashley was not the hugest fan of that, but she also trusts God's will, and she trusts, like when we pray about things, and when I say, hey, I feel like God's telling me this, she'll kind of pray about it, and if she feels right about it, then we'll move on it.
That alignment is huge. And
you got to understand, we've been working really hard at the time to get our kids in there right at that age where this is the right age to take them and everything. And so this is before COVID, so we gave all the money away, and then COVID hit, and within 3 to 4 months we would have had our trip booked, and they would have canceled it, and we wouldn't have got our money back. So there's a little tidbit, like God protected that money from being wasted on nothing, and gave it to multiply and to give to someone else who was able to like make life-changing differences at that time.
Wow.
So that all went down. So time goes by. I go, okay, so I'm testing you, God. Okay, we have enough. We have good abundance. That's great. We're blessed. That must be it. Almost exactly a year later, 10 times that amount that we gave away showed up in 2 separate checks, to almost to the dollar. And we're talking a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just boom, boom. And God was like, there you go.
Wow.
And in scenarios that are not unreasonable, but like completely unexpected.
Yes.
Like there's no way that you should have got a check for that, or that shouldn't have been worth that much, or it shouldn't have appreciated in value that much by the time I sold it. Like it just, the things that happened were just like, this is obviously just purely nothing to do with anything I did, just showed up on the doorstep. And I went, point taken.
Just showing off. Yeah.
I got it. Okay. So, and to that end, I knew that was an isolated incident where I was supposed to learn a lesson, and that he taught me it. And so it was a little more cut and dry. But I also know from that the point is not to play a game with God.
Yeah.
Right. If he doesn't ask me to give money away, I don't just give money away because I want it returned to me. I'm looking for the opportunity and praying that God would make it clear where I can invest in the kingdom when he asks me to. I am aware and I am ready for when the time is right. I don't make my own choices on that, because we can really be bad stewards of money, giving it away in God's name on our own power.
I was just going to ask you that next question.
Right? And I've done it too. Oh man, how long is this going to go? One more quick story. We were doing these missions trips to Mexico, and I'd gone on a couple, and we would take these old, terrible school buses down that needed fueled like every 2 hours, and they're uncomfortable, and they didn't have air conditioning, and there's no bathrooms. Yeah. And it was a crucible to go on this Mr. trip. And I've gone a couple times, like, okay, there's got to be a better way. So friend of a friend through the church found a tour bus, an old 80s tour bus that they had for sale. They basically gave it to us. We took it in. I took it to our mechanic shop. We started fixing it up. And at first it was like, oh, like we're going to put $5,000 or something into this. And then we're going to this is going to be a wicked deal. Sure. So then put some money into it. The more we take it apart, the more problems we find, the more problems we find, the more problems we find. Oh, I want to kind of look cool too. So I got some cool decals on the side. We paint the wheels up. Like this got DVD players in it. We get them working for everybody. I'm like, this is going to be sweet. It's got a bathroom. We're going to have to stop and be comfortable. $30,000 later, I'm like, well, that got out of hand, but man, am I going to be, and this is the secret underlying thing, am I going to be a hero to everybody going on this mission? They're going to be so happy. So I'm literally fighting this bus to the bitter end, like to the last hour before we left. Like I took the bus out for a round, make sure everything's working, come back, headlights don't work. And I'm up till 3 a.m, rewiring things, can't figure it out, find parts that don't fit and like put new headlights in the thing, screw them on so it's going to work. It's just utter gong show. So I show up with the bus for the mission trip in the morning and I've like barely slept. And then on this trip, you work like a dog, like you die.
Yes.
You're working so hard on this trip. And then we drive 30 hours there and I'm one of 2 drivers. So guess who's not getting much more sleep. So anyways, we get everyone in the bus. We're all loaded up. Everyone's excited. We start going. We head into the border. I lean back in my nice cushy coach chair. Oh, I can sleep now. It's so good. I lean back. Boom. Me. Engine blew up.
Oh, man.
On the bus. It's 40 people in this bus going on this mission trip. And I'm like, Lord, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We gave my own money. I worked so many hours. I did everything to make this good. Like, this is going to be such a good thing for this mission trip because they go every 6 months. This bus is going to serve them for years.
Yeah.
Like, why, Lord? Why? 30 grand? I could have given 30 grand to the thing and what we could have done. And so anyways, we rounded up a bunch of vehicles and old buses and we got everyone loaded up and we went on the mission trip. And in hindsight, after I looked at it and thought about it a long time ago, what am I supposed to learn from this? What is the lesson here? Like, what? Like, I'm not a victim.
No.
This happened on purpose for me to learn something. And the thing in the long run that I felt is that I was trying to do it. I was the hero.
Yeah.
It was about me. It was about that I have these resources and assets and I have companies and I can make everyone's life better and you're all going to like worship the idol of Jory. I'm worshiping myself by doing this. I wasn't doing it because God told me to. I was doing it because I wanted to do something cool. I wanted my legacy to be that I brought this.
Yeah.
And it's not about me.
No.
Right? And so I made it about me instead of about the kingdom. And that's the lesson I had to
And that's when it
learn
blows up in your face.
and it blows up in your face with great suffering. So anyway, there's another story about learning lessons about giving money. And when what's the right way and what's the wrong way to do it.
I guess the question was like, because there are so many people that want to do great things for the kingdom. And I've seen excessive amounts of people going way out of their way, almost to the point of detriment, to give their piece or what they think God is asking them. So like, where's the wisdom in the defining line of a healthy amount?
For sure. And I really think that you need to be discerning of when God is actually calling you or not. And I've heard talks on this and I've seen it many times as you have some people that are working in the church and volunteering their time. So they don't have cash resources necessarily.
Right.
They're giving their time resources.
Yeah.
And they're literally there every minute of every day.
Yeah.
And not to discount that value. Like that is amazing.
Right.
But there's a certain point where like these people often get burned out.
Yep.
And they will act out very poorly or things will go bad or the effort that they put in is not doing well. The fruit's not coming. There's no multiplication on it. And the question starts being, okay, but did God call you to do this? What's the purpose for it? Why are you here? Like, I think a lot of times we're doing it to try and appease ourselves. Like we get there and we show up and we put the time in, almost like the sackcloth perspective. It's like we're doing our time to sacrifice for God's kingdom. But you're here on your own strength for your own purposes, trying to appease whatever guilt or problems that you have in your own life. And God never asked you to do that.
And then the people that God's entrusted you who get the leftovers of your energies.
Yeah, because it's your own strength.
Yeah.
If God is your strength and he's called you to do it, he'll provide what you need and you'll see fruit out of it.
That's right.
So if you're giving your time, you're giving your money, you're giving your resources, and you're not seeing fruit and there isn't a calling in it and you haven't actually asked God, hey, is this what you want me to do? And then waited on his discernment or started to move looking for him to direct, then you need to maybe look at your process a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Such a good conversation.
It is. I surely enjoy
Yeah.
this conversation and the one that led up to this, Tim. And I appreciate the questions. You initiated this conversation, which really was a blessing to me ultimately.
Good.
And hopefully now this will also be a blessing to everyone else who pays attention.
Yes,
and listens
absolutely.
in on this.
Yeah. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So again, Built to Lead podcasts. If this has been helpful to you, if it's changed your mindset or added value to you, just ask that you would share it, you would like it, you would comment on it, you engage with us. We love it when we get responses and comments from people. It shows us that what we're doing has value and is making an impact. I know for me at times when I'm just like, why am I even doing this and spending all this time, that just in that moment where I want to give up, I get that little message like, hey, I really appreciate what you did. So every time that you're doing that, you're blessing us, and we really appreciate it. Good. So again, stewardship over ownership. Make sure you're being a steward of what God gives you and looking for God's calling in your life.
Yes, so good.
Have a great day, everyone.